Day number 9 dawned bright and clear. This was the first day here that only happy clouds were visible and plenty of blue sky and chirping birds. We were sad not to be able to spend just a few more hours soaking up the sunshine in Salzburg, but there were many miles to cover before evening. A quick stop for chocolate at the train station Spar, and it was on board the train for Innsbruck. We had planned out around 7 hours of travel for the day. We would be stopping in Innsbruck for lunch and hoped to do some sightseeing as well. It didn't quite end up the way we planned it, but we didn't know that at this point in the morning. After Innsbruck, we would continue our journey westward to Sargans and then take a bus south to Balzers, Liechtenstein, just south of the capital city, Vaduz. It would be a day full of miles and memories and learning to embrace the adventure no matter what form it takes. After a week of nearly non-stop sightseeing in Vienna and Salzburg, it was nice to be able to relax and let the sights come to us, so to speak. The western region of Austria is a beautiful section of Europe, and on our passage towards the border, we were able to see several small and picturesque towns, as well as landscapes of green pastures and rugged mountains. Our stop in Innsbruck was a tad more fraught with harried moments than any traveler hopes for when entering a new city. I'm sure Innsbruck is a nice place to visit if you have a map, a bus pass, and a plan, but we had none of those. We did come across a fun little lunch place which serves as one bright spot in our recollections. At Baguette, they offered a wide variety of fresh sandwiches, salads, and soups.
Here we are at the Baguette in Innsbruck, with the mountains all around, and our bacon sandwich, one of the best tap waters, apricot pastry, and a nutty bread with all of our lovely salads. Just came out of that door, and you see signs here, and then you have to go through here, and it's like 2 doors behind us.
Though not shown here, we walked up and down one of Innsbruck's streets about 3 times in the space of the next hour, trying to access just one wide open view of the amazing mountain ranges that surrounded us. At one point, we met a fellow traveler who was bicycling through the region, and she was very helpful, so that was a second bright spot in our memories. Trying to break away from the buildings blocking our view was a bit too much for us this go of it, so we at last decided to make our way back to the train. This also became a hurdle, but it was conquered. Maybe not with flying colors, but it was conquered all the same. Adventures come in all kinds and sizes. They aren't always the most fun, but the experience will teach you about taking on challenges and will also very quickly pinpoint weaknesses that need improved on. Lesson 1. A map and a plan can make a huge difference in an afternoon. Lesson 2. If you don't have a map and a plan, get them as soon as possible. Lesson 3. If impossible to obtain said map and plan, learn to embrace the challenge and try to make the best of it. All around, it will be much more enjoyable in the present and a better memory in the future. Once in Sargans, we hopped aboard the Liechtenstein bus. We got premier front row seats on the top floor, and from our vantage point, we were able to see most of Liechtenstein over the next half hour. The Principality of Liechtenstein is the 6th smallest country in the world, coming in at roughly 62 square miles with a population around 37,000. It is so small that you can see the entire country from a spot in the Swiss Alps nearby. The country is one of 2 in the world that is double landlocked. The Liechtenstein form of government consists of a constitutional hereditary monarchy on a democratic and parliamentary basis. This basically means that they have a resident prince who is royalty by lineage, and that there is a prime minister and 4 other ministers that report to parliament and the prince. The country is also independent of the European Union. There is no army in Liechtenstein, and they do not enforce border control with Switzerland. Incidentally, a unit of Swiss infantry once meandered across the border and covered about a mile before realizing their mistake. The unintentional invasion was brought to Liechtenstein's attention, but they chose to ignore the incident. The native language is German, but most of the populace speak in an Alemannic dialect that is more similar to Swiss German than Standard German. It is unique and a source of national pride. The national anthem of Liechtenstein, is sung to the same tune as the United Kingdom's national anthem and is called Up Above the Young Rhine. In 1936, at the World Olympics, it was discovered that Liechtenstein's national flag was identical to that of Haiti's. The next year, Liechtenstein added a crown in the upper left corner for differentiation purposes. The Principality is very serious about national quiet times as a populace. These occur from noon to 1:30 for lunch break, and at night after 10 p.m. Thankfully, our Airbnb hostess was kind enough to take us to a small supermarket right after we arrived, and we were all situated in our apartment before quiet time.
Almost 9 p.m. Right in Balzers, Liechtenstein. We are very hungry. We have got the traditional frozen cheese pies and salad and apricots.
The next morning, we took a quick hike up to Haus Gutenberg, a castle built in the 13th century that sits above Balzers. It was only about half a mile from our Airbnb, and we enjoyed exploring a little more of Liechtenstein before it was time to catch the bus to Switzerland. From the top of this steep hill, you can see much of Liechtenstein below, as well as the beautiful mountain ranges that surround the little country. From Haus Gutenberg, we watched the sunrise and relaxed in the calm of our surroundings. Well, until the lawn mowing started, but up until then it was quiet. On our return to the apartment, we decided to pick up some local groceries in the form of stray apples. We added those to one of the most delicious breakfasts of elderflower yogurt, fresh bread and butter, and apricots. Then it was off to the bus stop and eventually the train station. We really liked Liechtenstein, and we would definitely go back. It was a somewhat tight connection between the arrival of our bus and the departure of the train, but honestly not bad at all considering some of our other experiences catching trains in Europe. We were now in Switzerland, and due to the fact that there are no borders, we had no idea when we left Liechtenstein and entered Switzerland. Once on board the train, we walked the length of multiple train cars before deciding on a set of seats for the next leg of the journey. We might as well have skipped finding seats though, because we didn't stay in them long. That ride was mostly spent gazing out the window and filming the landscape on the opposite side of the carriage. Our destination of the day was Bern, the capital city of Switzerland. We found that Bern was not an overly touristy city and seemed to represent a normal pace of life. Unless you are a pedestrian and having to look out for an outrageous amount of bicycles. That's a different story. There were literally hundreds of those two-wheeled machines whizzing everywhere. Our first stop in Bern was for lunch. We ended up at a Migros Market restaurant, and wow, I would go back in a New York minute.
We have ordered our food and paid for it. This is by weight in the warm department. And we also have a savory encrusted phyllo treat, a slice of bread, the traditional soup, and is that an incredible Peking dessert or what?
At a Migros market like this one, you make your selection of food and then most of the items you pay for by weight, though some items are pay per slice or pay per beverage and so on. It is economical certainly, but it's also very authentic, very cultural, and there are so many delicious choices. Pulling ourselves away from a new favorite foodie experience, we took an abbreviated walking tour around Bern. It wasn't our favorite destination, but still iconic with the orange and blue hues and stopping to see the local mascot, the bear. After one more view of the city from the top floor of a local hotel, we decided to take our leave and make our way to a village outside of Bern. Here we would be spending the next couple of nights in the Swiss countryside. Little did we know what a neat experience that would be.